going to be talking about customer experience more broadly, and the ultimate question: are our customers changing faster than you? And yes, I do have the longest job title on LinkedIn, General Manager of Omni Digital Store Operations and Team Member Experience for a company called Super Retail Group. And I'll explain who they are in just a moment. So just a little bit about me before we get going. I graduated in 1994 with a marketing degree, just as this thing called the internet came along. And actually, since then, my passion of really understanding the customer from my marketing with actually how might technology really exploit the kind of opportunity of engaging customers is generally where my whole career has ended up being. Incredibly fortunate to work with some amazing brands along the journey. So I think this conversation is absolutely timely. There's never been a more important time to consider the interplay between product, price, and customer experience. So with that in mind, in the next 30 minutes, I've got 5 chapters that I'd like to go through. So first and foremost, I'm going to share my earliest customer experience memory, a little bit of an insight into me, but equally there's a lot of lessons that we can learn there. I'll talk about Super Retail Group, who I'll refer to as SRG, just to provide a little bit more real world context to the kind of things that we're doing, and hopefully there'll be some lessons or thought provoking there. And then I'll change gears a little bit and talk about the industry more broadly. And, are we keeping up with the way the customer is changing, indeed their expectations? And then layer that into what hopefully will be quite a practical, what I'm referring to as a CX recipe book. And then a bit more future gazing. So just a few caveats. First and foremost, these are my views, not my employers, which is code for the investor relations team, has not polished all of my slides. So if you're expecting a glossy corporate presentation, you'll have to wait. I've been up over 14 hours. I will do my best to grab my coffee to keep going, so that there's a number of pieces that I'll talk to. Context rules in this game. So I will come at it from a retail perspective. You may have a very different lens, but equally, hopefully the topics and the themes will come to life. So with that in mind, my earliest CX memory. So let's get in our time machines. I'll take you on a journey back to the East Coast near Norwich, which I'm sure some of you are very familiar with, particularly those in Cambridge, and the year is 1978. The Bee Gees are in the charts. Grease has just been released. It's a good time to be alive with those two factors. And this little thing called Garfield has just been released, and what a future he's had. So I need to explain this slide because my brother freaked out when I shared that he was with him. So Saturday night was treat night in our family, and treat night meant cake night. And fortunately, this particular Saturday, it was my turn to choose which cake we had. We're a pretty humble family, and I'd chosen Bakewell tart because, quite frankly, who doesn't love Bakewell tart? When you bite into it, the way the icing sticks to your teeth, the roof of your mouth, it's a pretty luxurious experience. And like a good soldier, I'd eaten all of my boiled cabbage, which is the gateway to the cake. And for those of you that were around, you know that boiling vegetables to an inch of their life was the way to do it back in 1978. So I completed and eaten my dinner, and I was ready for this amazing experience of getting involved in Mr. Kipling's Bakewell tart. Mr. Kipling, for those of you that don't know, creates exceedingly good cakes. So I'd eaten my dinner. I had to wait for my brother to finish his and my sister, and then my mum brought the cake over in the box. She opened the box, out slid the Bakewell tart, but to my absolute ghast, it didn't have any icing on it. There was a production problem. The very favourite that I absolutely love was missing. And at 6 years old, this is quite a traumatic experience, as I'm sure many of you can imagine, and indeed of those with parents may be experiencing a similar thing. So after much discussion and angst in the family, my dad has always encouraged us to take initiative, pointed out that there was a phone number on the side of the box, and maybe as I was so upset, I should try and do something about it. So, being brave, plucking up all of my courage, I walked to the hall, because that's what you did those days, and picked up the big green phone, dialed the number, and a nice lady answered. And I said, "Can I speak to Mr. Kipling, please?" Now, being very polite, she pointed out that Mr. Kipling was a bit busy and unable to come and help me, but she was interested in what I had to say. So I explained what had happened, albeit with a bit of help from my dad. And she promised me that she'd tell Mr. Kipling and see what she could do about it. So with that, we were not allowed to eat the remainder of the cake because we had to give evidence, and that particular phone doesn't take pictures. So we had no way of providing evidence of what the problem was. The very next day, I was playing at the back. My mum called me. My brother and I ran to the window to see the biggest van outside of our house that we'd ever seen. And it looked very similar to this. Mr. Kipling, exceedingly good cakes. And we could see there was a man in the back rummaging around. And I stood by the door waiting to see what happened. And he came out with the biggest brown box I'd ever seen and proceeded to walk down the path towards us. And he leant forward and asked, "Are you Brian?" I said, "Yes, I am." I said, "Are you Mr. Kipling?" He said, "Yes, I am." He said, "I've got you a present." And he gave me this big brown box. And it was full of cakes, all the different cakes Mr. Kipling made, a multitude of them. And it absolutely made my day, it made my week, it made my month. And that experience has stuck with me. And I thought it was appropriate to share today if you to get a bit of an insight into my background and the way I used to rock particular shirts back in the day. But there's some important lessons from the customer experience that I think is important to talk to. First and foremost, emotion is key. Really simple purchase, let's face it. You know, a cake, you don't even think about it most of the time. But for some people, it's actually an emotional experience. And it's the entire experience you need to consider, not just that point of purchase, which is where a lot of people focus their energy. What's the usage? What happens when things go wrong? How does that end-to-end really hang together? The second key thing is that actually customer experience is a company-wide responsibility. There wasn't a team in the corner just working on this. Well, the lady that answered the phone, they had the processes, like it absolutely needs to be end-to-end in terms of that experience. The third key thing is that your brand's reputation hinges on the quality of your customer experience, and you need to deliver on your promises. So my provocation to you is, are you balancing your investment? Are you over-indexing building this amazing brand that looks glossy with influencers and all sorts of stuff to create this compelling, but actually the reality just doesn't meet it? Are you investing enough in experience? And in my experience, I'm going to use experience twice, forgive me, but in my experience, not enough companies do. Focus on the brand, not the experience. The next key aspect is the importance of simplicity. Simplicity matters, as exemplified by Mr. Kipling's exceedingly good cakes. What a powerful statement when you actually think about it and how it stood the test of time. Can you express that, your proposition, so effectively that it resonates so well? The other aspect is mistakes happen. Like, no matter what you try and do, how you try and operate, the reality is things go wrong. So my question to you is actually, with the right trust with your brand, the proper recovery process, forgiveness is possible, but you've got to actually formalize those processes and end to end. If these things happen, what are we going to do? And my challenge to myself consistently, and to you guys that are in business and those that potentially will be, like, really think about how you create memorable experiences that literally will be talked about for decades. It's become one of those family events. For them, really simple. For us, it was an emotional experience that resonated. So just a bit of a kind of taster to get us going. Let's change gears a little bit. So who's Super Retail Group, and what's the context of why I'm here? So Super Retail Group is one of Australia and New Zealand's leading retailers. We have 4 absolutely incredible brands. We have Super Cheap Auto, which is everything that you need to do with your car or your 4-wheel drive or whatever it might be. We have a brand called BCF, which stands for Boating, Camping and Fishing. And anyone in Australia would know, if you're not boating, camping or fishing, chances are you're asleep or dead. It's what every Australian does. We have Rebel Sports, which is the absolutely leading sports retailer in Australia. Some amazing stories around people like Sam Kerr buying her first pair of football boots in Rebel. So, you know, really kind of part of the fabric. And most recently, we purchased a brand called Macpac, 50-year-old apparel and outdoor company, originally from New Zealand, really high quality gear. So we've got those 4 brands. We've got 736 stores across Australia and New Zealand, 6 websites. We operate in Australia, New Zealand, and China. And we've been recognised as delivering actually really innovative experiences. So, for example, a lot of our Rebel stores have basketball courts, 5-a-side courts, etc. You can go in and really experience it and kind of bring to life that passion. So, importantly, I wanted to share the vision of the company. So I think this is really important, inspiring you to live your passion. So all of the brands that we have are really high involvement. People that do them generally have a high passion for that activity. And importantly, most of the 15,000 plus employees that we have really resonate strongly with one of those brands as well. So when you go into one of our BCF stores, our Rebel stores, whatever it might be, you're having a really passionate conversation with a like-minded person. So that vision component is incredibly important. And we talked about passion is our secret sauce. The mission of the company, again, very succinct and clear, inspire 10 million active customers to live their passion. And we timestamp that to 2025. And the strategy, and you'll see some threads here that become really important. Growing our annual customer values is really one of our primary levers there. And then there's 4 key goals around growing the 4 brands, like really kind of driving market share within those. Leveraging closeness to customer. How do we capture all of the different touch points and information and do that in a really effective way with our customers? Driving the connected omni-retail supply chain, really important. We have the right product in the right place so the team that can kind of support our customers with buying it. Simplifying the business, really trying to streamline activity. And the 5th one, which is particularly close to my heart, is excelling omni-retail. So how do we join all of the different touch points and the dots to deliver a seamless experience? So you'll notice customer, 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 kind of within the vision, within the mission, and within some of these goals. And then we get onto our, which quite frankly is not our secret weapon, and this is totally one of the things that sets us apart. And this is the amount of members that we have. And we classify an active member as not only somebody that's joined a club, but has made a purchase within the last 12 months. And you can see there, for example, BCF, 89% of all of our sales are from club members. Just think about all of that first party data, all of that insight around what people are buying, what they're interested in, and how we can leverage that to actually go deeper in our conversations. And to put into context, 10 million active customers is literally 50% of the adult population in Australia. Now, if you add up, I know UK reference, like how many people have Tesco Active Club card, how many people maybe use Nectar, Marks and Sparks, like that doesn't even get close to 50% of the adult population in England. And that was one of the big things that I noticed when I came out here 6 years ago, is like, actually, how do you think differently about customer experience if suddenly your target audience is a third of the current size? That really has a bit of a shift in your mind around, do you know what, we've got to look after these people, deliver the right experiences so we can maximize the value, because there isn't an infinite pool there, which on reflection, maybe I was a bit too lax when I was in the UK on that. So I think that's a really interesting question to ask yourself in that context. So just a couple of examples of the loyalty programs that we run. So this one's for Super Cheap Auto, really classic insight from customer research, that sometimes they resist buying something because they think it's going to come on sale in the next week, in the next 2 weeks. I'm going to hold off because these sales come around. Really important now with obviously Black Friday events, but with people tightening their belts. And we introduced something called Price Promise. And this absolutely resonates with our super cheap customers. That if you buy something, for example, for $200 and it goes on sale the next week, we give you the balance. So in this instance, if you bought it for 200, it discounts to 150. We give you $50 credit so that you can then use on future sales. And as a result, people are now buying with confidence that actually, yeah, if that does go in sale, I won't feel like I've missed out. And guess what happens when they get sent credits? That's right, they come back and buy more and use their credits. And slightly differently for Rebel, more of a classic earn and burn. So the insight was actually, if I'm coming in and buying my new cricket gear, basketball gear, whatever it is, I'd like to just earn rewards for that I can then utilize. And all of these things actually run off the same tech stack, but the execution is different per brand. And I think that's, again, an interesting model of how we roll. So, chapter 3, excuse me. A bit of a broader perspective now around what's going on, what I'm seeing going on in the market, and from different research points. And the question is, are you keeping up with expectations? And it's fair to say customers' expectations are growing and growing and growing. And it could be a completely different sector, completely unrelated, but one experience somewhere drives an expectation of others. And the gap from what I see, quite frankly, is getting bigger. And if you're not keeping up, well, you're going to be in trouble, quite frankly. So the concept of the now customer, is among us. So who's the now customer? First and foremost, they're informed. Right? Everyone's using their phone, doing research, understanding what's going on in the market. They're impatient. They're absolutely socially influenced, albeit different demographics, clearly. They're borderless. This is particularly relevant in Australia. We see people buying things from China, from Europe, from America. They're actually, the pool of options that they have is so different these days. And they absolutely expect seamless and consistent interactions. And just to try to emphasize some of these points, I pulled out some key stats from various sources for you to get a feel from it. So more than 80% of customers have shopped across at least 3 channels in the last 6 months. So this isn't, walk into a store, have a conversation, got what I've needed, and out. They're on their phone, they're using other sources. So how are you creating that unified experience? Absolutely imperative. 97%, and this one always, quite frankly, shudders me. If they've had a bad customer service experience, they're off. And I think back to my Mr. Kipling experience. If they hadn't solved that the way they did, and they'd actually ignored my call, and put a load of friction there, would we have switched brands? Chances are we would have. And I would be maybe doing a case study of how to do it wrong, as opposed to how to do it right the way they did then. The 97% was like phenomenal. 39% of consumers say they're less patient today than they were before the pandemic. So, there's that extra angst that maybe people are carrying around, this realization that you need to make the most of every single moment. So less patience. So guess what? You've got to be able to deliver. You've got to be able to step up. 50% customers reported switching brands in 2022. Now, this could be glass half full. It could be glass half empty. I'd suggest that they're switching to brands that are delivering compelling, joined up customer experiences and switching away from those that aren't. And I absolutely glass half full on this one. And then 69% of shoppers won't shop at the same retailer if their delivery is more than 2 days late. So again, end-to-end experience, how much emphasis do you put on the front end, your fancy creative, optimizing the search, et cetera, are you spending enough time and effort and energy in fulfillment? 2 days late, you've lost 70%. And the answer isn't to offer and state a really long delivery time, because guess what? If it's too long, they're impatient, they won't buy from you. So you've got to be investing in all of that value chain. Now, this gets suddenly really important. 100% increase in the cost for customer acquisition in the last 5 years. Anyone that does Google AdWords would have been experienced this. So bringing new people into your ecosystem has never been so expensive. And guess what? Chances are they won't be very loyal and might switch off. So you've got to be prepared to deliver the right piece. And then importantly, just for broader context, you look at what's been going on in the S&P 500, the average company lifespan is getting less and less and less. Disruption is happening. New entrants and old ways of thinking and delivering experiences are no longer cutting it. So, is it all bad news? Well, it could be for some, let's face it. But the good news is, in my opinion, from what I've seen and experienced, CX can be your multiplier. And it's a double whammy. It's absolutely fundamental in retention. Right? If you have not got the right customer experience, people will not stay with you. Simple as that. And equally, it's paramount in acquisition. Right? Are you giving that right experience from that very first interaction? Is it consistent? The CX is a great opportunity of being your multiplier as a defense mechanism to all of those data points around what's going on in the market, what's going on in the customer psyche. So let's bring that down into practical pieces. And I've coined the phrase a CX recipe book. Hopefully some of these will resonate. When I chatted to Gotham and Mohammed, it was like, maybe get a bit practical, some things to consider. These are all personal reflections and arguably scars and hard lessons that I've learned during the course of my career. So first and foremost, company strategy. You know, if customer experience is not embedded in your company strategy, do not kid yourself that you are going to significantly move the needle. It's got to be front and center. And I've seen too many organizations spin up a very little small CX company, put it all part of a department. It's not integrated. They end up getting frustrated. It doesn't work. Guess what? Suddenly the board is going, that CX thing is a load of rubbish, isn't it? That was a load of hype. And they don't deliver on it. Absolutely small things can make a difference. And I think that will come through during the course of today. But actually, all of those small things need to stack together to really move the needle. My provocation to us is many executives lack an understanding of CX. If you think about it, most of them have come up through finance. Those CEOs today, maybe manufacturing, operations. CX, like maybe when they started their careers, wasn't really a thing that they can latch onto and really actually comprehend. So I think we've all got a responsibility for educating our executive teams, our boards, on what actually CX is, why it's important, and how we assert ourselves on it. So bite one, company strategy. Number two, people and culture. So let's assume you managed to get your executive support, happy days. We now get into actually the whole organization culture. You've got to have an open, curious, action-orientated mindset. You need a blend of the skilled capabilities. You've got to be able to be pooling customer insights throughout the organization. Again, this isn't just the CX team. All of those touch points, how are you aggregating that and driving a consistent view? And then importantly, this doesn't work in a hierarchical piece. You've got to have actually what I term a connected matrix of different people across the organization that come together, share their insights, align on the opportunity, align on delivering a solution. Think about organizational structure in your culture to deliver CX successfully. Bite three, customer value proposition. You've got to have a clear and succinct CVP. You know, my simple method is like actually you're clear on what you want to be famous for, and you know, maybe articulate it. We help X by doing Y through Z. But just really kind of get succinct and boil it down. And you've got to get alignment on that, because if you're not aligned to that, you're going to be in trouble. You're going to be pulling in different directions. And this, to my point there, is not a slogan. It's got to be part of your DNA. Everybody in the organization, particularly those that interact with customers, but actually, you know, even in product and merch and throughout, got to understand the role that they play within that. Got to understand it, anchor on the CVP, and how to bring that to life. So just a quick one, and I won't dwell on this because of time, but you know, a bit of a framework of how you think about your CVP. Surprise, understand your audience, be clear on how you deliver value, be clear on how you're going to stand out from competitors and boil it down into something really clear and simple. Look at your proof points, stay flexible, continue to iterate, learn, evolve, and make sure it's communicated effectively. And monitoring is key as well. Bite 4, service design. So you've got your strategy, you've got your people and culture, you've got your CVP, you've got to then now get down into practical service design, which is those end-to-end customer journeys, those experiences, and how you really bring that to life. So that comes from understanding your customer, ideally involving them in the service design, doing your prototyping, doing your A/B testing, really driving granular insight to drive it forward. Data here is really important, but it's not the only answer. Data can tell you what, you've got to understand why. And that's where the two need to work together. The big call out again is confirmation bias. The amount of times I've seen people use customer research and they latch onto one small element because it confirms a previously held bias. You've got to have that open mind, and previously held assumptions around your customers, quite frankly, have gone out the window. If you haven't asserted yourself in understanding your customer post-COVID, I highly recommend you do. You've got to have the right tech ecosystem. You've got to have technical experts that understand business and customer, agile execution, and really get after it. And my encouragement here is you try and avoid a big, grand transformation program that gets presented to the board, gets presented to the city, and makes very bold promises, because it kills agility. You will learn things along the way to try and incrementally improve, incrementally a step forward. And just a conceptual framework, and this might go a little bit deep, so forgive me. I'll keep it high level. But what are those touch points and those interactions and the data points that you could be getting? What I term business events. So the interactions, what's happening with your picking, your packing, your fulfillment, your inventory, all of those pieces. How are you pulling that together in a data lake or some form of actually consolidating the data points, really understanding what's going on with your customers and across those pieces, and using those insights to drive activity, whether that's customized emails, whether it's personalized website experience, targeted activity. There's a whole raft of pieces that all of that starts to mesh together, and often algorithms are at the heart of driving those improvements. And ideally, and this is always an aspiration, very few people have nailed it, you have one single view of the customer. You have one single view of your inventory, and you have one single view of the order and how that's working through. So service is always on. I don't need to necessarily phone the contact center or whatever it might be. Whoever I interact with can give me support. And then the final bite is bite 6. You've got to start. Like, this might feel overwhelming, but make a start. Measure and learn. So align on the KPIs you're going after. Stay focused. Demonstrate the impact, but just as importantly, demonstrate what you've learned. What have we learned by this activity, and where does it take us next? Because then it starts to actually open doors, open eyes around what the opportunity is. And absolutely avoid sole reliance on NPS. I mean, whoever does NPS is on the extremes. It was either absolutely incredible, amazing, I need to tell you how great that person was, versus it was completely appalling, you mucked up. You've got to understand what's happening with the 98% of people in the middle. Otherwise, you just start chasing the wrong things. And one of the things that we do there, which is from a company called Humi, is we consistently monitor the end-to-end customer journey. We get regular feedback over 200 different data points, and we can see how we track. It feeds our backlog, among other things, and it helps us consistently improve. And the team loves seeing things go from amber to green in our customers' eyes. You wouldn't believe what that unlocks. So, chapter 5, where's it heading? And I'm on the home straight. Two key things for me. In my opinion, it's going high touch and high tech. And what do I mean by that? So from a high touch perspective, first and foremost, you've got to have a happy team, because a happy team enables you to have happy customers. If you go into a store, they don't even eyeball you and acknowledge you, it doesn't create the right environment. And actually, if you're using the right technology to automate a lot of those routine tasks, you're freeing up your people to do high touch interactions. They build relationships, they have conversations, and they build trust. Now, AI is amazing, not particularly brilliant at those three things. So this is actually when it starts to join together that's really important. So high touch is key. And if you're thinking about automation, you're thinking about AI, yes, it could potentially drive a cost saving, but could it drive a benefit if you redeployed that capital elsewhere, i.e. in the high touch context? So embrace the benefits of automation, but redeploy mindfully. And then we get to high tech. And this is when I go out on a bit of a limb, so forgive me. But in my opinion, when we look at the real innovations, for me, come actually when the tech diverges. You know, the internet only really kind of got going when the bandwidth came as well. And then what happened is actually when the mobile phone came, and these innovations kept building on top of each other and overlapping, and it took us to another level. And I think there's a big wave coming from a high-tech perspective. If you think about all of that lovely first-party data that you want to be capturing, and then you think about the power of voice, in my opinion, voice still has a lot of growth. You know, my ability to talk is significantly quicker than my ability to type. So how am I interacting with something? There's a real big trend around conversational commerce. So actually you're asking real world questions. And this is when ChatGPT really kicks in and takes it to another level. So my prediction is that customers will increasingly use their voice to interact with some concept of an operating system that has GPT, first party data, conversational commerce at its heart. It will evolve based on all of those stored dialogues, all those threads, and it will know everything about you that's important. Obviously, trust and data is key here. And potentially customers will interact with you without even realizing it. So my use case here is on ChatGPT. Please be my sales assistant. I'm thinking about buying a basketball system for my son. What's important? Here are the 10 things you need to consider when buying a basketball system. Oh, that's useful. Particularly go after this one. Here's my price point. Which ones do you recommend? Based on that price point, based on that criteria, here's 4 for you that I recommend. That's great. I then went further, shortlisted it to 2, and my next question was who's successful delivery? And it went off, got an assessment, and it then gave me a recommendation of which retailer to buy it from. And I didn't even touch the retailer's website, but that interaction with GPT just really helped the discovery process right down to the selection of a specific product from a specific retailer. It will not be long before I simply say, yeah, buy that one. That's going to happen. It won't, retail is just going to be one chapter of that story. It will be the new gateway. My encouragement is to put your mind to it, be there, and be ready. So that, my friends, is where I get to the bottom line. CX is where you can truly, truly, truly differentiate yourself to drive growth, and it comes from the culture of your organization. That is my nutshell.